Doing the multiples, so we'll see how I do. Hello, humanity. I arrive with some consciousness and an idea. And of course, I have a whole system because I'm autistic in that way. Hello, hi. Hi, Trick Light's here. All right, Trick Light. Today is the day we venture into the land of memes and memetics. And this is an aspect of my expertise that I have absolutely no conscious memory learning, but is something that I am an expert in. It's so weird. So I had a stroke in 2019. If you haven't heard, it was very dramatic. And one of the things it took from me is most of the pathways that give me any direct access to any long-term anything memory. But I have all this like muscle memory and awareness memory. That's important. Also, let us contemplate the great Dr. Leary. That guy, I think, who we all know, who's so important to the landscape of consciousness of humanity. In the 1990s, when I was doing tech, I was a protege of this guy, Michael Gosney. I do remember being Michael's protege. I do not have memory over how he taught me what he did. Again, this is a factor of my stroke, the disruption in my brain. But Michael, Timothy Leary once said that Michael was like the only human he could trust with digital consciousness. And Michael Gosney is one of the humans responsible for us having multimedia in our homes. So he was very involved in the CD-ROM. He did, oh my gosh, we used to have so much fun. I used to produce with him as well. I was his little, he just took me under his wing. Anyway, the teachings were, here, Katie, have a whole bunch, make a dose. And then he would teach me how to sustain split consciousness using Buckminster-Fuller logic. And I have so much training in those kinds of ideas because they're all based on tensegrity. Tensegrity is a structural principle that says you have two fixed aspects and then one's fluid. And you're always going to see me put the fluid factor in the middle. So the two fixed could be floor and ceiling and everything that's happening in your environment. That's like how Feng Shui works. But the fixed aspects of human are life expectancy, right? And ability, right? Or disability. When Michael was teaching me about the sustaining of the consciousness of split, oh my goodness, hello. I already had a master's degree from Carnegie Mellon in critical theory. I forgot that I went to CMU when I had my stroke in 2019. That is how fucked up my brain was. That is how destroyed my inner orientation to anything was. And when I was in process of healing that stroke, I found stage 3 breast cancer, and that was in March of 2020. So what I'm saying, or like my opinions about consciousness as it relates to digital, is however I understand what I was given by those elders, Timothy Leary's protege, and also building Web 1.0, and I've seeded neural networks, and my master's degrees in propaganda. However I understand all of that teaching is the geometry of how I navigated the pandemic and my cancer experience successfully and remaining sane. Okay, so like any kind of, what is that called? Any advice for struggling with mental health and neurological pain? Yes. Wow, I was like talking about my stroke. That's okay. So, the system that I'm in is Taoism, which you might know as the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. And it is a whole cosmology that gives us a weighted way of experiencing dimension on our insides. And I'm going to show this fascia to TikTok. I don't have it up on my screen for YouTube, but this geometry of our fascia that you see here is called tensegrity. It's that same idea as I was just saying about tensegrity. In our body, it's called biotensegrity, our fascia. This geometry is where we experience sensing and relating to each other and sensation and pain and upset and emotions and everything. And for those of us whose lived experience is what I like to call abnormal, like from Young Frankenstein, when that guy goes to get the brain and he's like, oh, I got you your brain. And it's abnormal. Our intuitive alignment to gravity specifically, gravity, not reality, gravity, can create disruption. It can create, it's called entropy in our brain, which is not the same as entropy of like everything decaying, but cognitive science recognizes we have something called brain entropy. And the other thing that can happen is we have all these different kinds of tissue. And these are all different kinds of ways that we interface with and connect with our own lived experience. So like anything mental or like mental health, conceptually, as a species, we have aligned to parietal fascia. I don't know if this is going to answer your question, but we're just going to like, let's just go with it, okay? Parietal fascia lines all the cavities of our body. So in this slide, you can see I have this image that looks like the person has a bathing cap on. There is a whole cavity, there's a whole space, a zone, just for our brain and our spinal cord that is surrounded by parietal fascia. That is in our society, culturally, that is where we have every idea having to do with sanity and life. Because our parietal fascia is the fascia that aligns to life expectancy. And our, how shall I say this? We changed the definition of death in the 1980s away from the heart, which is just for the purpose of today, we're going to, obviously the heart is visceral because it's an organ, but it also has a connection to neural and deep fascia in ways that create that multidimensional heart experience that we have. That is where humans are qualified to hear and determine life and death. Once we pivoted to advanced life support as a species, everything bubbled into this parietal zone because death is now defined at the brain stem, not at the heart. My suspicion, my deep suspicion, which I'm just going to say is a suspicion, is that neurodivergence, oppression, especially oppression, but also any kind of marginalization creates like an inner load. It's called allostasis. It creates an inner load in our inner experience of tensegrity. And it like smashes how we understand, consciously or not, moving and navigating in the world. And so if we're already like, this is just an idea, but I think it's a reasonable one because our neurons have the same structure as well. This is just tensegrity. So if we're already like more neurally dense, which is what happens with autism, or if you have synesthesia, if you have any kind of inherent leaning towards things like experiencing hallucinations, stand more upright and your shoulders have a full range of motion. Woo! That's amazing. Yay. So I guess the punchline, I'm so happy that you said that, Manu, is the system that keeps all of us miserable has the same geometry as the systems that keep us alive. It's all tensegrity. It is all tensegrity, all of it. So our neural tensegrity is how we have connective tissue that surrounds our neurons and creates the sheath. Oh my goodness, the sheath experience, the viscosity and the smoothness. In this visualization, it would be the lines and that circle there, the way that Chinese medicine understands how these different phases interact with each other. And what I am very aware of and still trying to find like succinct language for, because again, this is like memory pathways destroyed, but the way that algorithm traps our mind. Okay, so the mind is Shen, S-H-E-N, and it never exists in the third dimension unless you turn it into something. But the way algorithm grabs our Shen, our cognitive Shen, and guides them is towards annihilation. That is the orientation of big data globally. And algorithm works through machine language logic rooted in big data. It's just a fact. I can't even like have an opinion about it anymore, okay? But here's the problem. It's a genuine problem. The problem is neuroscience, the default is destruction of the algorithm, yes, but not of our species, not of our species. But I love that you said default, because what I think happened during COVID, one of the things that happened is we stopped orienting to each other in social settings and were forced as a species, as a planet, to see each other in and through digital media pretty much only for over a year planetarily. And during that time, many individuals in our species experienced a disruption in the somatosensory cortex, in all the brain stem and all of our neurons, where we smell and taste and swallow. And I'm just looking to get a thing up here so you can see. Here we go. So we smell with our very first cranial nerve. The olfactory nerve is the one that smells. Taste is like in the middle of the tree of the 12 days of Christmas of our cranial nerves. But these last two that are after the vagus nerve, the spinal accessory nerve and the hypoglossal nerve, if logic, true and genuine logic, if we have a problem in the brain, which is what COVID did for us planetarily, whether or not anybody wants to admit it, when you cannot smell or taste, you cannot human. You cannot human. Okay, you can person living in the 21st century because we have hospitals and electricity and soap and all that shit. but you cannot human as a species. Our species needs to have smell and taste. And it needs to be oriented in alignment with our eyes, which is horizontal. So part of what happened is all of humanity had to go vertical with how we're oriented towards each other, which puts us oriented to the corona, and we're having a coronavirus. And then everybody decided, okay, we're done, and we're just going to move on with our day. And so I think there's a little bit of like when you're leveling a picture and you can't quite get the level right. I think that's part of what's happening. It's how does this link to the image? So the olfactory nerve, the trigeminal facial nerves are where we start to feel well, should we go through? No, how do I want to do this? It relates to this image because this image is a rendering of our brain from the bottom up, from the brain stem up. So if you're looking as below, which is this view, looking up like this, and life is defined at the brain stem, which is so primal, we cannot control that. That's where most of our nerves in our brain leave our brain. It creates it's like getting seasick or motion sick in a car, only I think it's happening in our cognitive net. And the reason for that is the way our brain consumes and manages and creates a dimensional experience for us in digital space from reality. When you were in psychosis, all you smelled was, ooh, woo, that's a big deal. So let me let's get back to some kind of reality here. So now we're back in my living room. Let's just say for the sake, this is your brain. I have a can in my hand. I can tell you for a fact that our first two cranial nerves stay in the brain. Those are the nerves that smell and see. The third cranial nerve is the oculomotor. The third cranial nerve is where we start to navigate. And you can experience that right now. If you close your eyes, you do not stop existing. If you close your eyes, you could probably feel your way through and around your very own environment. So optically, we ended up, let me put it in the correct, where we were like fixated on our own corona because we were looking at our computers for 2 years. But the way that we ideally experience the corona is through reclining and resting and like lying down. And that aligns us to our default mode network. This is aligned to our central executive network. And this is also why we're annihilating each other. Because in the digital, these are all opinions, clearly. But in the digital, your posture immediately shifts, when you close your eyes. We are so often facing our front-facing cameras that when we look back on ourselves or see each other's videos, we should be seeing the video as though we're looking at a play or a movie. Instead, we see the video as though we're looking in a mirror. And it creates that like effect in our brain, in our mind, subconsciously somewhere, where there's that thing with the mirrors where you get the infinite mirrors. That is not how we're oriented as a species. That works if we're like an octopus or something. We have something called chirality, where we have two sides, but they're not symmetric. You can't just like it doesn't work, because otherwise, I don't know, maybe we wouldn't work. We do have only 2 feet. Memes and memetics come from this guy, Richard Dawkins, who is a biology guy who in the 1970s wrote a book called The Selfish Gene. I thought I read it in the 1970s. There's no fucking way. I'm sure I read it early in the 1980s. I would not have been able to understand it when I was 8 or 9, but by the time I was a teenager, yes. And Dawkins gives us two big ideas with the selfish gene. He gives us the idea that memes, a meme is a unit of culture, like this is a gift given to me by a Tibetan Lama. This is a meme. This is a unit of Tibetan Buddhism. But so are ideas, units of culture, like legality of human or brain death. So the way that we internalize that and then behave as a result influences how we experience epigenetics. And epigenetics is the part where you have inherited trauma. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that idea. So Dawkins gives us meme and memetics, and then who's his name? Douglas Hofstadter wrote Metamagical Themas in the 80s. He's a cognitive scientist. He turned me into all of this. He turned me on to all of this. He discusses memes as infinitely recursive cognitive events, which is what I was just saying with that experience of the infinite mirror. Imagine, okay, if you have very, very dense neurons, if you're autistic, or if you have brain damage from something like a COVID infection, or if you have an experience of exile in your friend group, or any of these things, and then we go into these digital contexts, and some part of us, for some people, perceive that as reality. Nothing that happens in a computer is real. Absolutely none of it. 100% of digital is a visualization. It's a fabrication. And could I explain the mirror piece? Yes. Do I have mirrors to show you? Possibly. Yes. Wait, hold on. We're just going to go into the art. Okay. Pretend like these are just mirrors. Okay. So the infinite mirror thing is, this is one mirror. Now you can see like what's being reflected in the mirror. If I put these mirrors towards each other, have you ever done that in your bathroom? Where you have one mirror facing the other, and if you get it just the right angle, it looks like you're just in a hall of infinitive, a hall of infinity of mirrors. Yeah, this is mitochondria. Katie does mitochondria. But so this is one of the things that happens when we go into digital. We should be having, it's called orthogonal. We should be having an experience that's very vector-based and 90-degree angles instead of yes, no, right, left, either, or. And then when you add on to that, y'all, the trauma industrial complex and how that fucking exploded during the pandemic. And now we have everybody attuned to the rhetoric of nervous system regulation and some weird fucking hierarchy in our vagus nerve, which is not how vagus nerve Vegas is. Our vagus nerve is 10 lords a leaping. In the 12 days of Christmas, our vagus nerve is avoiding lava. And then we go, you must make the totality of human. And the vagus nerve is not, we can't control it. I am definitely coming from media theory. So my media model, this CMY, is anatomedia. And what I did at Trips is, and Trips has been here, okay? Trips has been here for some of this chaos. Oh my goodness me. Uh-oh, here comes Norman. Everybody watch out. Here he is. Are you going to say hi to the humans before I bring up the thing? Here, this is Norman. He's a very handsome man. I didn't get Norman until I knew I wouldn't kill him. Okay. He's my gold Labubu. Shit. Vectors. Media. Yes, anatomedia. I have so this is the Mi Jing 2 that you always see me in front of, or not always, but often. And what I put on it today is at the spine here, I have Jing, Qi, and Shen, the three treasures, as three different CMY values. Yellow goes with Jing, goes with earth. Magenta goes with Qi, goes with fire. Cyan goes with Shen, goes with water. And we should always be balanced this way on the inside, always this way. This magenta, this is where we experience media. Okay, and this is also though, where we experience the corona, like the edge of our planet, which is aligned to the horizon. It's aligned to the equator, not up and down. And we are very oriented up and down right now. And we have all this bullshit happening with human design and the pipeline. So what anatomedia is, Trips, is I started the totality of this as if I was stuck in the center of a clear lucite cube, which is essentially what happened when I had my stroke. How would I communicate to you my lived experience, knowing that you're going to have bias no matter how you enter into the system? This is the whole observer effect. And then it just aligned with that the cyan is our salience network. Magenta is our central executive network. Yellow aligns to our default mode network. These are major networks in our brain that were only identified after 2000. So they were identified after I received all my fancy training. I don't know what the fuck is going on with Web 3.0, but there does not seem to be an awareness about how humans experience media and how our brains have to do so much conversion when we interface digitally. We are interfacing at most 2 dimensions. Then our brain does all this shit to turn it into 3D. If we're looking at a mirage, we're looking at propaganda, if we're in those front-facing cameras, if I didn't have my screen oriented so that when I hold up writing, it's correct to your eyes, 2 years of that is disorienting, straight up. I remember I was doing a lot of training with the American Psychiatric Association and a bunch of these entities and organizations. And you had to like have your fucking face in frame to show that you were present in the thing. Whoa, yes, but also what? It leads to what Michel Foucault calls a panopticon, which is a form of surveillance that is used in jails, where they'll have like a big tower in the center of a jail, and there may or may not be a guard in the tower, but all of the prisoners will adjust their behavior accordingly. And I really we are seeing the effects of some of that play out in real time dangerously right now, especially here in the US, where we're experiencing full fascism. Full fascism. Come on in. So we have this experience of empathy when we have a whole circuit between what we smell and how our throat responds. You know how when you get stressed out, you like lose your saliva, your mouth gets all dry? That matters. I don't know why. It matters very much to the ancients. Norman, stop eating the tensegrity models. Stop eating the tensegrity. So a lot of what I've been designing the last few years has been, he woke me up so many times last night, like screaming. You were screaming at me. Lights on, out of bed. Don't even look so cute and innocent. Cats are definitely Shen. Dogs, I don't know if they are. But cats are definitely, they have their own mind. So what this variation of the I Ching 2 is showing you, because I didn't want to have 7 things with me. I thought 1 was enough for today. And I'm just going to keep it kind of in the background here so I don't break anything. This here in front of this phase, these are those 5 phases of Chinese medicine: earth, fire, water, metal, wood. The way that China organized the color scheme of this is based on organic things that occur in an environment. So fire is based on, what does fire look like? Earth is based on, what is the color of dirt? You know, wood is based on growth of trees. Water is based on bodies of water. It's not based on Roy G. Biv. But it is definitely based on visibility. So I did the CMY to help you all see what's happening on our insides. And part of what's happening in our insides is we're just a little bit twisted. It ties into the whole experience of life. Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's have a hot flash. Yay. My goodness. It ties into the experience of life, and it ties into the experience of consciousness and awareness of life. And something that I learned in this last couple of years is that our friends, the physicists, have a hard time with matter and life. It's a strange thing. So from like a matter perspective, materiality, that aligns to this idea of deep time, the evolution time. How old is the universe? How old are how many millions of hundreds of millions of years has one or other things been lying around? And that is Jing, life, F-E-L-I-F-E. That's plants, photosynthesis, cellular division. You know, when early cells first absorbed a bacterium, and then through fusion, we got the nucleus of a cell and the mitochondria. Holy shit. But all of that is Jing. You do not need to be awake, alive, well, you do need to be alive, but you don't need to be able to measure that shit in order for it to happen. If you did, we would not be here asking questions about the nature of the universe. It never would have happened. And so unless and until there's an actual fucking place to put the fact of human and the fact of life whole, all of us will suffer at the way that the sciences are creating fractures in our consciousness through a false belief that you can understand a human by fucking cutting our brains. That's how neuroscience understands us. It's a dark weirdness, okay? That is not a good thing, I don't think. So Jing is life. Qi or Qi is consciousness. Shen is sentience. This is my parsing. There is a lot more sentience in the universe than there is consciousness, right? So if life is photosynthesis, sentience would be mitochondria of a cell. Sentience would be ant colonies and like animals. The digital screen is based, well, and they're using RGB logic, which is really dangerous, but sentience, self-organizing principles. We have sentience in our bodies through all of the automagic functions of our nervous system. Our nervous system, y'all. I was talking to my therapist today about my experience of my stroke. I love that she always asks me questions about like, what did it feel like? And not in a weird, like getting off on my trauma kind of a way. But I wasn't really worried because I never lost control of my bowels or my bladder. So even though I couldn't feel anything from the waist down, I knew things were still running. That is a signal that my vagus nerve was working. Not that my vagus nerve was out of regulation or whatever. So sentience then is Shen. And that is amazing. So the way it works in the cosmology of China is Shen are magical mysticals. They're magical mysticals that do the labor of Chinese medicine. They animate our organs, they animate our body systems, but they also connect to the cosmos and to evolution through our genetic code. It's written into the cosmology. It's just not presented obviously. And the reason for that is this magenta land here, our central executive network, and how we experience logos, words, language, but also measurement, but also labels, but also when humans write laws that operate fully against the universe and nature, which we are really fucking good at. We used to sell each other. People who look like me ate most of the mummies, ate them, and ate other humans within the last century here in the US. Humans who look like I do. And we have all inherited that. And then we were all stuck at the horizon. We were all stuck on our screens for 2 years with who at the helm? Okay, that guy who somehow convinced everybody that COVID was not a threat. Somehow, in all of that, what got through as truth, as relief, was, oh, good, I can just go back to what I was doing and take off my mask and have a lived experience again. It's just a cold. COVID operates like HIV in our bodies. It is fire in our bodies. And it creates permanent changes. It also accelerates all these other kinds of processes that are very uncomfortable. POTS, MCAS, cancers, Alzheimer's, all kinds of shit. And empathy. And especially empathy. So in comes Katie Z with all my weird training from the 90s that I don't remember because I had a stroke. But I also navigated so much of this last 5 years with a fucked up, broken brain and direct threat to my life. I've just been like, how did I do it? I just want to know. Like, there's no rational reason I'm alive. None. It's pretty cool. Actually, there is money. I spent all of my dead mother's money. If I did not have that, I would not have been able to do this. But money's gone, so now we're turning it into a myth, and everybody can buy my stuff, buy my memes or whatever. But anyway, yes. So it's an orientation to understanding that whatever this lived experience of this cube is, you and I can't know for sure what's happening on the inside of a whole other human. And the fact that our technology is so strong that they knew exactly, my staging went from 1 when I went in for my initial thing to 3C. That's as like high as you get without having metastatic cancer. It jumped that high when they got deeper into their technology to be able to perceive my cancer. But they were perceiving the cancer, not experiencing my cancer, right? If you have any kind of like tachycardia or POTS symptoms, and you get like dizzy and lightheaded when you stand up, we can have a whole conversation about what that experience is, but only you know what it feels like to almost pass out in your body. And if your body doesn't measure correctly, if you don't have the right heart rate for that, if you don't have the right age, if you have anxiety, if you have any of these labels, your truth, your lived experience doesn't matter, because the numbers, what I can measure, says something else. That's fucked up. It's really fucked up. So sorry. I'm just not like a utopian in that regard. So one of the things that Michael was very intent on helping me learn in the 90s, when we first created the Matrix, which was Web 1.0, was how to orient in digital space. So I did not create anything that would trap you, the end user, in these loops that lead to what we're now seeing with this kind of psychosis. Like, we knew that was a possibility 30 years ago. I am genuinely surprised when I hear these AI experts discuss their surprise at these psychosis phenomena. It's so logical. When a human makes a list in a computer, the list starts at 0. So if there are 8 things in a list, the list goes up to 7 integers. That is not how humans human. We begin at 1. The loops are from the media. And from the meme and the algorithm and the way that the machine understands us, understanding ourselves, understands whatever. So what ended up coming to light is the structure of a trigram in Chinese cosmology. Is a 3-layered structure. I don't have one right in front of me. That's like in the Bagua where they have the lines. And the 3 layers are earth, human, heaven. Which drawings? This is all of my art behind me that you're seeing, if that's your question. But the 3 layers are earth, human, and heaven. Human is in the middle. So as these treasures, earth is yellow, human is magenta, heaven is cyan. You can see, though, these are not perfectly seeing the bones of how it all works, and then the stories we layer on the top. So we are still in tensegrity as principle. We are still in this Trinity thing. What happens with the digital, I think sometimes, and it happens for me too, but it's just so surprising that it's surprising to the AI humans. When I was designing this, at one point I called a robotics engineer in Boston, because I was like, please, I am not out of my mind with this, am I? And I was saying, like, remember, and like how power dynamics work, and the difference between the laws of man and the laws of the universe and all of this. And he goes, yeah, you just map the back of your retina. And I was like, excuse me, I was avoiding Oppenheimer this whole time. What do you mean I did the back of my retina? I always operate through the back of my retina, because that's the only thing I know for sure. is everything's going to land upside down and backwards. But yes. And then I said, are you all using retinal logic in your robotics? And he said, yes. And I was like, why? Unless your robots have to actually see, are you using the logic of our eyes? That's only one of our 5 senses, y'all. We also hear, touch, taste, and smell. And I would imagine, as the taxonomy of species, where we land in the totality of the evolution of consciousness to the point where we are having extinction level threat to our species, self-generated, most of that is not happening in bipedal great apes. Most of that is happening in fish and bacteria and insects and like lesser life forms. And then we have this asshole, okay, he's a dick, Darwin, who takes this beautiful taxonomy that this other guy Linnaeus made, and he goes, this only happens because of conflict and war. So Darwin's evolution, his theory of evolution, is cultural supremacy. It's straight up colonization. It's conqueror logic. That's absurd. Absolutely absurd. Anytime I hear an evolution person say to me, oh, well, this species had to give this thing up in order to get that, I go, you're not contemplating evolution as it happens. Do you, like, truly, do you think that at some point, like, the fish got together and were like, we should make one that can jump out of the water and flip flap on its little flippers? How does that happen? And like they had like the Council of Fish to create lungs? I really don't think it happens that way. Whatever the if there's a single point of design or not, it's absurd. And I learned very deeply during the pandemic that we're not taught to question anymore, especially if you come from any shame-based system or a religion that you have to deconstruct from at any point in your life. So I am here to offer disruption. I made some art. I made a whole deck of cards. Some of the art on this is Buddhist. I did not make that art, but it is all public domain. And the purpose is to create distortion and disruption at the corona, which is like the middle way, the middle path, so that we have a more dimensional experience of our technology. Yes, these all operate like... Well, you asked me questions, Truth Matters? That's entirely possible, because I came on to talk about memetics, and then people asked me other things. So do you want to ask me again, and I'll do better? Because I'm very coachable in that way. Very coachable. I'm also like coming to awarenesses that are like bonkers in my mind. All right, well, we'll wait for Truth Matters to ask another question and see if I can do a better answer. But so this is our brain. Oh, culturally speaking. Yeah, the whole concept of cultural as it relates to exchanging units, culture units, memes, digital memes is not the meme I'm talking about. I'm talking about the meme of brain death and our adoption of that. I'm talking about the meme of human design, or the meme of 911 and what does emergency mean for us as a species. Species, oh my goodness. So what the Buddhists do, okay, is they take us up to nirvana, they take us into the heaven lands. And what the Taoists do is they take us back down to the ground, back down to earth. One of the problems that we have culturally right now, truth matters, is anytime somebody sees or says S the shape that the mustache man took from Buddhism and then fully corrupted. I think y'all know what shape I'm discussing. We have such a, I do too, like an immediate visceral negative response to that word. And that word is the map, it's the logic of the Eightfold Noble Path. So something I realized recently, oh, thank you, Truth, is, part of what I've been tasked with by being given all this fucking access to the ancients of whatever this wisdom stream is, you just get me like this because it was from my stroke, but is to feng shui, to reorient how we understand. The Star of David is a Vajrayogini symbol. Vajrayogini is in the deck. The Star of David is a Merkaba. And I believe that the way we experience Merkaba as crystal and crystalline is through sound, not through light. Where's the Vajrayogini? Vajrayogini. And also, that Star of David is the geometry that the Vedas give to the heart. Shiva and Shakti. Yeah. So Vajrayogini is our triple burner. She's the triple burner. A very unique concept in Chinese cosmology is this triple burner is so fascinating. So that's her star. Yeah. Mask and femme triangles overlap, the chalice and the blade. So, but here's the thing, those ideas are supposed to guide our minds into greater and larger open pastures. Greater and larger open pastures. The triple burner in the body is our torso. It's where all of our major organs are. And the center of it is our pericardium. So the three treasures of Jing, Qi, and Shen are the three burners. Jing, Qi, and Shen. This magical, mystical Shen interface is a visualization of how we experience that balance in our body. And then I just gave us different things to contemplate. But this triple burner does not exist in the third dimension because it is very specifically things like the process of maturation. We have a gland here, the thymus gland in our chest. That's a great place to contemplate triple burner. And also it's where our inner child is in the map. The cosmogram that I had nothing to do with, which I would love to tell you I made. I just reverse engineered it. And then the Taoist orientation is to the water rather than the fire. So where Kundalini is going to, wake the snake up at the base, and then pretty much you just go straight through the central channel. No. With the Taoism, we're going to stay on this back end, the back side. That's where the water is. And the front end is where we're receiving. So Taoism considers the front of the body yin and the back of the body yang, and the center of the body, all of the above, everything else. Hi, Martin. I'm so hot. Fishing is pretty yin. Yes, fishing is yin. And look, he's fishing with the Milky Way. So in the deck that I made, the Milky Way and the child here, I align it to our chakras. But as consciousness, okay, we don't experience the perfectness of the alignment of our own little CMY cube unless we have assistance in anchoring our body to the actual planet, not the digital machine. That happens with gravity, but also pretty colors. So here's another way of looking at the triple burner. I knew I had it here somewhere. This is what I would say is your triple burner. Jing, Qi, and Shen, right in the center. The pathway of this on our skin is it like starts at your fourth finger, it goes up, then it goes behind your head, and then back forward, and it also dips into our, I mean, it's like a very, very complex meridian. But the three fires, this is nuclear energy specifically, fusion and fission. So cellular division, mitosis, meiosis, the way mitochondria work, and then how that propagates forward into the process of evolution. So it turns out if you contemplate memetics and epigenetics, you're also doing genetics. And when our friend Richard Dawkins wrote that book, The Selfish Gene, he was talking about eugenics. I don't think eugenics, something the white man is very good at, are we not? And we're experiencing in real time right now in the US. So I'm just saying, like, if we're going to have mirage experiences with media, what if, I know it's a confusing context, but it's an openly transparent context, this one that I've crafted. And the worst that's going to happen is I'm going to not understand Hilbert space in physics. That's the worst that's going to happen. Okay? That's a pretty good risk. And I'm just saying that because this is all like media theory, taxonomy, cognitive science. So my art operates as meme to reorient our retina to the horizon rather than orienting it to the stars, to Sagittarius, to the sagittal. So our ideal experience of corona, of the mirror of our mind, is that it is like so far out, like when you cast a fishing line, that it goes all the way to where the ocean meets the sky. And you can have an experience, a perceptual experience of floating in the Milky Way without land. I think that's pretty amazing, personally. I learned recently that Einstein used to imagine he was riding light waves. Look what I came up with. The as though perspective, which is the one that's neither general or special relativity. It's the one in the middle. Earth, human, heaven. I don't know how the two align to general and special. Thank you, because that's math. But I'm $100 an hour. Thank you for asking. I should be more, but that's what it is. Appreciate that. Should hire you to be my. So the deck is 64 cards. The cards, yay! Yeah, so the cards will be here in my hand probably in 2 weeks, and then they will be in your hand very soon thereafter. If you pre-ordered, You will also get a free copy of the book that I wrote to go with it. Yes, please. Yes. The book is 100 and some, like 120 pages. Everybody who gets the deck, there's a card in the deck that has a QR code that goes to a Google Drive that has, I've already pre-populated it with variations of the Nijing 2 with a little tour. It's like a little mini version of the 2 books, 1 library media bundle that I put together. My hope is once this is out in the world, I can use it to show you how the physics fit together. Because not shockingly, my model is quantum, where Jing aligns to up and down quarks, Qi aligns to charm and strange, and Shen aligns to up and down. And I say not surprising because it's my fucking consent model in kink. It's the reason I'm not afraid of men. It's the reason I always have signatory rights on accounts. It's the reason I help to change laws internationally. It's the reason I'm alive. But also, I don't remember most of my life anymore because I had that stroke. So my model is a one way to contemplate Dr. Penrose's orchestrated OR model of consciousness, which I never knew existed. Okay. But all he's talking about is tensegrity. And guess where it's happening in our brain? It seems to be happening in our corpus callosum, which is the largest amount of white matter in our brain. But if you have enough electricity happening in your brain, if you're experiencing epilepsy, they can cut your corpus callosum, and I quote, and you can walk around just fine. Therefore, the corpus callosum must not be integral to our lived experience. Are you fucking kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me? What? So let's just all be happy that I developed a fascination with the corpus callosum as a child. And I think the medulla oblongata is the most fascinating thing. And some weirdo hippie named Michael Gosney grabbed me in the 90s and said, hey, you're wiring the planet. Let's teach you how to protect the consciousness. And all I feel so bad just like showing up like, oh, I have answers. If I can't remember where I fucking learned them, it's very, very bothersome. But I managed to do the totality of my model all through art and all through lived experience. Because there was a time a couple years ago when I was like, why do I know this? And it can't be something that even if I learned it, all I've been remembering is what it feels like to be a student, a child, the child of teachers, the child of a symphony, the child of a conductor, the child of a, trumpet player. I don't remember learning music, but my model turns the I Ching into sound, not light. Isaac Newton, okay, our friend, dead white guy, discovers gravity. Okay, he experienced entropy. That's what that word is. But then he was really interested in optics. And he, I guess, is the reason we have that Roy G. Biv for the visible spectrum. Hey, but guess what? It doesn't. Isaac Newton originally only identified 5: red, yellow, blue, green, and something he called violet, that Tibet calls space, China calls metal. And then he added indigo and orange because he wanted it to work with the solfeggio. And like our friend here just acknowledged, light doesn't have octaves. So we have one orientation in our brain, which is the front to back orientation of our optical, our visual cortex. We have another orientation, which is side to side, which is our temporal lobe and our auditory experience. So it's this way and that way, but everything that comes into us, anything we experience on our right side or left side, now I'm looking at you, lands on the right side of our brain. And what we experience on here lands over there. And if you're already looking at a distortion, it will fuck you up very, like subtly. But this is part of why people are getting trapped in loops with media, with GPTs, because computers always go to 0 when they start their count again, and humans go to 1 or we're dead. Human starts at 1, fertilized cell, zygote. That is the moment that human might be possible. Nothing before then. And then it has to implant in a fucking singularity, an event horizon, also known as the uterus of a human. And then it goes through 3 stages. It has 3 trimesters. And then you have a baby. And then when you get your, what's that word, belly button, that's when we start breathing. And one of the first things that doctors are listening for is our screams. They listen for us to scream our life. Not, it's like sound is really important, y'all. And so we have a whole lived experience before we have a conscious experience. That is amazing. But none of it is inherently visible or experiential in the 3rd dimension, and still what it is. It's just an idea of an idea, or what I would call a thing of a thing. Okay, thank you. That was a little bit lecture-y. The first thing we do is scream. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last so I used to, in the kink context, I would say that generally speaking, we're only really paying attention to 2 breaths, our first and our last. I remember my father, when my dad was dying, my mom and I were like counting the clock, and it got to like 2.5 minutes between breath. And I was like, is that it? No, he ended up with like 3 minutes between his breath when he finally took his last breath. It was so remarkable to witness. But that's the last thing we do is exhale. And then I was speaking with a doctor who was sharing that when she was learning anatomy and doing their dissection, that there's a last breath, which is when they cut either the aorta or just the heart during a dissection. One last little puff of air leaves. And she was telling me how like the students would come from all around whenever anybody was at that point in a dissection, because it was so moving and amazing to witness. Screaming is a perfectly normal response to a system that overloads anyone in it. Yes. And also, it's not harmful to make noise. It's not inherently harmful. Sometimes the noise isn't pretty. Also notice everyone's reaction when a baby cries. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I need to go be a human, and I will be right back. I'm very gravity laden. I will be right back. Don't sit in my chair, Darla. Thank you. I'm working on my introception. The part where I'm aware that I actually need to like use restrooms and stuff. Oh, look at how terrible the light is now for the YouTube. Sorry about that. Hey, teacher, leave those kids alone. Don't tolerate parents are bad if their kid cries loud in public. And it's okay to make a sound. So was it 2022? I was already not happy with Bessel van der Kolk et al. And how they responded to the pandemic. The trauma industrial complex, instead of saying, wow, the totality of our model is based on past trauma and our species is experiencing a singular trauma, maybe we should do science real time. They put the acceleration on all their training. All right. Trauma industrial complex. Anyway. Jing Qian Shen. Consciousness at the corona. Memes. Units of culture. Ideas. But also just the nature of digital is flat. The nature of digital is like flash. And the nature of digital is binary. And the nature of human is dimension, at minimum 3. Length, width, and height. So when Einstein does his E equals mc squared, that can only exist on paper, on flatland. That's a square. I'm just saying, what if we pretend like it's a cube? And then align it to our bodies. And then I made like pretty like weird things that you don't need to have a lot of technology to understand for relief. Yeah. That this lady back here that you can kind of see is Schrodinger's cancer. Thank you. Schrodinger's cancer is me contemplating the nature of, I don't get any monitoring for my cancer. None. It is so probable that I will experience a recurrence and that it will show up everywhere, that it's not even worth screening for. There's no existential reality there that I've had to like cultivate an understanding of, right? And I'm going in the world still with a mask on because the more infections I get, the more viruses my body experiences, the more likely I am to have cancer again. But I'm the selfish one for asking people to mask around me, for following pandemic law, which is don't get sick in the first place. But yeah, we need to have like a little bit of leveling, a little bit of balancing. And also our brain is not fully parallel to the ground. It has a tilt to it, just like our planet does at the brainstem. All right, I can ignore these hot flashes no longer. I must go take my 3rd shower of the day. So great. I even finished with menopause. And I get hot flashes now because I had that cancer experience. So I leave you with, hey, Trick Light, please, 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 let's get together. I leave you with Shakyamuni, who is Prince Siddhartha. Oh my goodness. He is our hermit in the deck called Shantagrity, which says the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Email. You are being initiated into a feminine wisdom stream. And then this is all pathways to this enlightenment, golden elixir, blah, 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 which is really just literally getting your mind above or below that matrix so it doesn't get snared by the fucking algorithm of Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk and all those people. But very much, most especially AI. And I use AI. I'm in large language models, but they're not smart. And they tune to us. They tune us. So we can tune ourselves to the media, but that has to have analog, facts. Okay. Live long and prosper. And I will see you all soon. Bye. Bye.